Welcome to House Rule, a podcast about role-playing. This is episode 28, and I am Ed. I am joined by a whole panel of hosts, starting with...
Ebo.
Nice. I'm Lee.
I'm Murray.
This is Jeff.
Richard. Hi.
I like to think that this is a host of panels. We just got a bunch of panels. Each one of us is our own individual panel, and there's a whole bunch of them.
So, that sounds complicated.
It is complicated.
For sure
I think
there's
it's because
a
we're all schizophrenic.
Layers within layers.
Yep. It's an Inception thing.
All right, and we got some new material creeping down the internet tubes that we're really excited to do a little first read segment about. This is kind of pre-first since it's playtest material released by Paizo for their Pathfinder role-playing game for a little book coming up called Advanced Class Guide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, speaking of which, it's a little bit Inception-y. It's like classes within classes.
Well, yes and no.
I'm going to go with yes. I'll take half and half. 50 is good enough.
Half and half. I like the puns.
But yeah, it's a book slated to introduce a lot of gameplay options for characters of various classes, including a whole big giant gunny sack full of new classes.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest pile of classes they've released.
It's 10, right?
At all. It's 10, yeah, it's 10.
Right.
It's the core book?
Yep. It's so basically the idea behind the what's going on in this book is each class is a combination of two other classes from the Pathfinder role-playing game. We have the Arcanist, which is a sorcerer and wizard combo, the Blood Rager, which is a barbarian and sorcerer combo. The Brawler is a monk and fighter combo. Hunter is a ranger and pairs it with a druid's animal companion, is what it says. I don't know. So I guess you're like part man, part animal, which I thought they already had things for. Investigator is an alchemist and rogue. Shaman is oracle and witch, which is a master of spirits. A skald is a barbarian, which is a bard and a barbarian for those who aren't able to decipher my code words. Slayer is a ranger and rogue. Swashbuckler is a gunslinger and fighter, and War Priest is without guns. Yes, a Swashbuckler is a fighter with swashbucklery stuff.
I am.
And then a War Priest is a cleric and fighter, which is the most classic of all of the combinations in the thing, if you ask me.
I am not too proud to admit, in this moment, in front of you all, we have not talked about this together on purpose, for the purpose of this podcast, that I skipped that first section, and the fact that every class is a combination of two classes went completely over my head.
Oh, no way.
Page 2,
You
baby.
didn't see the theme, huh?
Well, I mean, I saw that they were combining different characteristics and traits and themes of classes, but it hadn't occurred to me that that was on purpose. It just occurred to me that they were scraping the very bottom of the barrel with all of their might.
There is a caveat to playing these classes also, is that they are restricted in multiclassing. Because the classes are intended to be a multiclass already, you cannot multiclass with either of the classes that they come out of. So you can't be a investigator and also a rogue, or a blood rager and a barbarian or sorcerer.
Yeah. You can't roll out the circus tent and be one of the classes that is not listed in that class, though.
So I assume it's going to be clarified, but I'm wondering if some of the other alternate classes are also forbidden, such as ninja, if you can't do a rogue.
I don't know.
Since for all intents and purposes they consider ninja to be an alternate rogue,
right?
I imagine it's probably restricted in that way.
So if you're familiar with things like the Mystic Theurge and the Arcane Trickster, it bears mentioning that this is nothing like that.
These are base classes, all 20 levels in whole.
Aren't those like prestiges that you just mentioned?
Those are prestiges that help to blend two classes and kind of I guess a much more shallow way.
Eldritch Knight is an even an additional and I would say even more prosaic example of that.
Yes.
It is so much just a wizard and a fighter combined, like each cut down the seams and sewed together.
Yeah.
So these combinations, it's kind of interesting what they've done is it's not just like thematic classes made from combinations. They seem to actually try to pull in like the thematics of the mechanics also to make it kind of feel like you're playing a combination of both.
I just wanted to say really quickly that you also can't meld two alternate classes, two of these advanced classes together if they share a common class. Like you can't
You can't do like a
Blood
hunter
Ranger and Arcanist.
Right. Or a
Can't do a
hunter and a
blood
slayer.
You can't be a Blood Ranger and an Arcanist, thank God.
However, you could play one of the ones that uses Wizard in a combat class, one of the ones that uses Cleric in a combat class, and then go into Mystic Theurge.
Yes, you could be some sort of goofy bastard class if you wanted.
You could do an Arcanist, Shaman, Mystic Theurge.
Yes, you could.
I don't even know what to think about that. It would take me a long time to really process what the hell's going on there.
And you see the fact that they worked some of them combinations was very obvious. Like I could tell that Arcanist or Arcanist, whatever you want to call it, was a combination of wizard stuff and sorcerer stuff, which is fine.
I actually thought that one was the most boring.
I didn't really, like I said, I didn't read too many of the
That one was the
specific
least-
spells.
Those are 5th ed rules, basically, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
The memorizing spells?
Yeah, they memorize as 5th ed wizards do. So you memorize your spells per day, but then you can use any slot to fill to cast from those memorized slots. They seem the least fleshed out because it's the only one that really just directly refers to, oh, you can take powers from this other class, basically.
Yeah.
Well, and like I could tell that like obviously Skull was a bard and a barbarian. Not
Barbarian.
not only I could tell that from reading the name because that's such a common. I feel like that's a theme that has been used before in some D&D or Pathfinder edition. The idea of a Skald being basically a savage bard.
In second edition, I know know this because recently I was playing Baldur's Gate 2, and you could be a Skald in there, and they were a bard who got a bunch of martial stuff and more combat related songs.
Yep.
There are savage skalds in Pathfinder.
Yeah.
Sure.
And War Priest is a classic cleric kit for first and second edition. Well,
Yep.
second edition it was a add-on to some certain of the clerics.
And not to mention a prestige class from 3.5, I want to say Complete Divine had a class called War Priest, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Yeah, it did.
See, and I think a lot of these things are things that people like have been traditionally wanting to accomplish with some of these classes. Like when you have a cleric in a group, it's not always going to be the regular cut from the cloth cleric, and I think one of the more common things to
From the
do
cloth.
is, I know I did that on purpose. The one of the things that people like to do is to try to they'll like worship a warrior style god and try to get that like kind of angle on it, so they're not just healing all the time, and so I mean that's just one example, but a lot of these are things that people like try to accomplish with so many tools, but now it's just kind of narrowed down into it.
I think that's an
Yeah.
awesome point. The thing that I really think that drives that home is that people have been trying to do that with multi-classing and not quite getting there for a long time. So it's like, if this is the solution to that, where we basically come up with every combination that you're going to want and flesh them out, and here they are, that also gives them products that they can basically combine and release forever.
Let me say one thing though about what Richard said about them people trying to accomplish different sorts of things with multiclassing and other combinations. I feel like Pathfinder has been really clumsy about this from the jump. They basically released the base classes anew. They had the same prestige classes plus and minus some from 3rd edition. And then they started releasing some materials, including the new core classes in whatever Advanced Player's Guide, I believe, and some new prestige classes. And then they really leaned really heavily on the what do you call them? The thing where you mod the class at level
Archetypes.
1.
Yeah, archetypes.
Sure. And it seems like that was what they wanted customization to be.
Right.
And then they just not long ago released a new book with like 30 prestige classes, and they've been coming out with some prestige classes for in other materials and supplements. And now the core classes have not been coming out very fast, but now all of a sudden they're like, here's some more for you. And I really don't understand. I feel like all of these things are endeavoring to accomplish the same thing, and I'm getting a little sick.
Yeah, I think that they probably originally didn't want to like put labels on it like that, and they wanted people to kind of have the freedom to make their own, decisions and kind of like piece it together their way. And I think they probably just, and I can't speak for anybody, but these seem like pretty common character, like common class matchups. So they probably just took some of the more obvious ones and fleshed it out, so that if somebody wanted to just do that and not have to try to piece it all together.
Well, I'm just
I
saying,
think
like,
some of them
I
are
think
common,
one of-
but some of them are pretty strange. Also.
Yeah, some of them
Well,
are
that
out
is
there.
true.
Like the investigator one is pretty wild.
Yeah,
the
I wouldn't
investigator
say that.
is almost exactly the same as another class. It's very similar to a 3.5 class, actually. Did anybody catch that?
Yeah, I did.
I think
I can't remember what they're called though, because I can never remember the name of any of the three.
I was actually surprised that wasn't out a little sooner, to be honest.
I like the investigator. I think they're one of the interesting ones.
the
I do
core
too. I think
Active prestige class.
the core problem that I have though is that I feel like they're making basically different paths to the same destination, but in so doing, it isn't exactly the same. It's
Right.
like you're basically chasing the same like style and story conceit with different mechanics, and I feel like that is. I feel like if they don't support one another, then that's tricky for me. Like I know for one, like I had a Kingmaker game, which is still on hiatus and not dead, but the NPC characters in that are Aldori Sword Lords, which are something in the Pathfinder setting that's kind of a big deal, and they had an archetype for fighters to play one of those for a long time, and then they just recently released a prestige class with the same name. And while they don't really conflict, it's also like they don't exactly link up like you're supposed to play a fighter of the archetype and then play the prestige class, in my opinion. And I don't like having all that banging around. It feels like like if they were just going to release a whole bunch of new core classes, why were we troubling ourselves with archetypes this whole time?
The only thing I'll say is that some of these classes, it doesn't really seem like you can get that out of their current archetype, how they're working it. Because you've got one that's a barbarian, and then you mash it up with the wizard. It's really difficult to do with the archetypes. The wizard archetypes are completely impossible to do
And I
that
guess
with.
I would agree with that.
The point that I'm making is not that you can do all of these things with archetypes. My point is that I guess I can defeat my own point by just saying that they are basically trying to accomplish different things. I think that the difference is that archetypes are kind of there for the light touch, where you're just trying to play a character who fits into the story in a certain special way. Sometimes archetypes really rewrite the class, but usually they're pretty subtle. Whereas these are very much more like you're trying to play a character who fits into the game world in a completely different way.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things is I think they didn't want to concede having to do things like in Jeff's game. I'm playing a ranger that I wanted a animal companion right away and still be a ranger, but they don't get them until 4th level. And then in Hunter, they get the animal companion at 1st level, so that they get it like a druid. but with the feat, I can take my ranger, my animal companion up to the druids, up to my ranger level, with just one feat. It's like boon companion or something
Sure.
like that. Uh, but then the hunter is allowing you to have the bonus 10 hit point or the bonus 10 to attacks or plus 20 to attacks at 20th level or whatever. Full base
doesn't.
attack bonus.
It's only
And
plus 15.
it's only 15.
Yep, they get
Oh.
medium BAB,
Well, okay.
and they get 6 level spells.
And then the other thing is they get 6 level spells.
They're
and they
very
get the
weird
druid
dish.
thing. But what I wanted to do, it's better for me to just take the feat because I wanted some of the things that they took away from the ranger, and like the full base attack, I guess. But I also wanted the favorite enemy, so just taking the feat is more effective for me, from what I've seen at least.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think it really comes down to what you want to get out of it. Like for my money, I could see myself playing at least a couple of these classes. But at the same time, I also really like Ed said, the subtle touch. Like where you can play a fighter or like a cleric or something, and you can just sort of tweak it a little bit and come up with something that fits your character a little bit better. And that's typically how I tend to work it.
That's one of my points, is that I did that to
Yeah.
mesh my ranger, and I would have to do the same thing to mesh the hunter because neither of them are giving me what I want. Maybe the hunter gives someone else exactly what they want, but it
Yeah.
doesn't give me exactly what I want.
Yeah.
And that's why the options are good. Like, I made basically a bard fighter in Ed's game using like alternate class stuff, like the
Yeah.
arcane duelist or whatever it is. I would have a harder time making a barbarian, and here it is. So
The barbarian does make everybody else into a barbarian, which is awesome.
it stacks with
I
bard.
think-
Also, that's just an aside.
I think
That
that
is
there
true.
was a archetype for Bard that was like a rage-inducing style. Anyway, I would have to actually go back and read the list, but this is just like a further on the spectrum version of that.
There's a prestige class in 3.5 that induces rage in your allies.
Yeah.
And I think if the worst thing that one of these classes does redundancy-wise is render an old archetype obsolete, then that's not really a problem.
Do
Yeah.
you think it interferes with the prestige classes, however?
I have no way of really knowing that. I mean, I think that there will be some weird interplay between some classes, especially ones that get irregular spellcasting improvements, like up to level 6 spells. I've always found that to be a weird
Like
gray area.
Slayer. Slayer to me just looks nearly every way better than the Assassin Prestige.
Slayer is super OP. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah. Slayer is ridiculous. It gets Death Strike at first level, basically.
I want to go on the record as
yeah.
saying that I did not read any of Slayer because the first line of Slayer is, "A Slayer is a consummate hunter," and there's another class in this document called Hunter, and I was like, nope!
Slayer gets full base attack bonus and 66 sneak attack damage, in addition to a bunch of other abilities.
Yeah, I have a
Okay.
feeling that's going to be the one that gets the nerfs immediately.
Yeah.
To
Favorite
cool down,
target also lets them study a target as a move action, and then get favored enemy bonuses against that target.
Also,
Yeah, they
good ability.
basically get a lot of the good damage stuff from Rogue and Ranger, like in one.
Yeah.
They really do.
One hit.
I want to cool down this discussion by bringing back that the Savage Scald that I was talking about earlier is the Bard Inciting Rage prestige
Okay.
class from Pathfinder. So we just went full circle.
I think that as far as prestige classes go, I think a lot of these lead really well into certain prestige classes, and a lot of them sort of overlap certain prestige classes. But to me, the prestige classes, they still have their place. Like if I go from fighter into duelist, or if I go from swashbuckler into duelist, as far as I'm concerned, my character is still a duelist in the end, and not either a swashbuckler or a fighter. When I get there, anyway.
But crunch-wise, what would you get from going to duelist that you wouldn't get from swashbuckler?
They get all sorts of duelists get parry-related abilities and
So does
reposting.
swashbuckler. So does swashbuckler.
I don't know.
think
To get intelligence to their damage.
Dex and
You
intelligence
get
to
precision
damage.
strike with swashbuckler. You get your swashbuckler level to damage.
No, I don't know.
And that's what I'm saying. A lot of these seem like they were prestige classes that were turned into 20th level classes.
I think prestige classes are the odd man out here. Because kind of like what Ed was saying about Paizo, if you look at the progression of stuff, initial release, they're like, we love core classes, we don't care about anything else. And then they're like, we still love core classes, but we want you to be able to do this. We still don't care about prestige classes or multi-classing. When the prestige class book came out, it was like weird. It was like, oh, okay, you guys care about prestige classes?
I didn't really notice that it had come out at first, and so when I finally wound up looking at it, it was actually kind of not old, but like many months off of being fresh. And I was just like, oh well, this is pretty sweet. I think it was just like I was looking at whatever the Pathfinder SRD website just to try to find something of interest for a character, and I wound up like looking at it and finding like every other prestige class I read was from this one book, and I was like, where did this even come from? I didn't realize that I didn't predict that they would do this at all.
It's like this advanced class guide seems like, looking at it now, more like the natural progression of where Paizo has been going. And so it makes the prestige class book look even stranger.
Yeah, I would say the prestige classes do seem like the odd man out for Paizo.
And I think that's kind of the curious thing about it is because I really liked a lot of the prestige classes in that book.
Yeah.
And probably would be more tempted to use them heavily if there weren't a host of new 20 level or classes coming out.
So would you guys say that this book is basically cutting the middleman out so that you can maybe start doing what a prestige class would allow you to do, but at level 1, and without getting whatever the bonuses that you would have gotten from starting from, say, like fighter and getting to whatever level, and then going to a prestige?
Given
I
I would say.
I was going to say, I don't think that's anything really new. Like, I feel like they've done that before. I
think the archetypes went to that.
Well, and even just like going back to 3.5 in whatever, the martial combat book had a 20 level class which was effectively the same as duelist. I think they called it swashbuckler or duelist.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was basically like trying to get you at the duelist mentality, because basically playing a fighter whose abilities are all supporting you fighting with weapons and armor and shields isn't all that much fun when you're wasting most of those abilities on not wearing armor and not using a shield.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of, that's sort of like something that I saw that they were trying to do then, and I'm not going to say I resented it, but I seldom really messed around with those classes.
I would say mechanically, absolutely. As far as thematically, prestige classes represent like a change in identity that only they can really give you.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
But yeah, mechanically, it's gonna be pretty much I get what I want right now.
Yeah. Well, because then it's like, if you wanted to always start the story out as, say, a investigator, then you don't have to build up to it from, playing as a rogue or whatever, and then, leveling into something else.
Also, this is sort of a side thing. A lot of people don't like doing the math and the pre-planning and that sort of thing to go into prestige classes or to go into multi-classing. Like when I first started playing D&D, I hated the idea of multi-classing, just because it was complicated. Like I didn't want to do the math, I didn't want to plan out my abilities and all that shit. And even now, like I was mentioning to Jeff before, that going into Duelist is pretty like I wanted to use a dueling sword and go into Duelist, and like my feat progression is pretty complicated. And I have like 1 free feat to use before I get to Duelist, and then I can start getting free feats that I can use for anything else. And like if you want to play something like that, but you don't want the complication of having to build this thing up, then you can just do that and play the swashbuckler.
Well, and that brings up a good point, because like I've got a buddy who has only played like one other campaign before he played Council of Thieves with us, and the first campaign that he played, he didn't have a lot of experience in, but he's trying to get back into the game, and he's like, I really want to like fight with my hands, but I don't want to be a monk, like I want to be like basically what a brawler is, but that wasn't a thing, so he had to like go through Fighter and try to plan out all these, the way his feats were going to be, and just kind of like micromanage it. I don't even remember if he picked a specific archetype or not, but I think he did. But either way, this probably would have cut a lot of that, you know, like I said, micromanaging out, and he
Sure.
could have just picked Brawler right from the beginning and kind of got a lot of the things that he wanted out of it at the beginning, being a new player, not really knowledgeable in all the different ways to go to get what he wants. So that's one way to look at it too, like
Sure.
Lee said. Simplifies
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's a certain stigma and flavor that's associated with monk, and maybe you just want to be a bruiser, maybe you want to be chaotic, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah, maybe you just want to smash faces because your guy likes to smash faces, and not because he has been trained in a monastery or anything, you know.
Yeah.
And I think there's merit to that. I mean, like browsing through the different classes, I can still see why I would want to play one thing over the other personally.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people are going to be like that, especially if you already know what stuff you can kit yourself out to do if you take the time to piece it together. But you have to think about it from a business perspective too. You know, having a book that allows people to do more simpler, you know, would bring in a certain amount of people that would otherwise be scared to try to do some of those things, you know, when venturing into this.
Well, yeah, and like I was saying, this could be only the first book. It's like, let's say there's 20 classes. This is 10 combinations out of, even if half of them are duds, 200. So what's the next 10 most popular ones, and that's the next book. Like,
As long as they all make sense like Scald does, then I think we're going to be good.
Are people hating on Barbarians? Because I think Barbarian is awesome.
No, I think it's pretty cool. I'm kind of glad that they. I mean, it seems like a little bit out of the box compared to the others, but still, I think it's really cool they did that, anyways.
I think Investigator's a little bit strange in there also.
Yeah, I think
Alchemist Rogue.
Alchemist Rogue does seem kind of bizarre, and their abilities are pretty strange in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like them. I like both of the weird ones, that being Scald and Investigator, a lot.
Yeah.
But I can see why people would think that they're strange.
I was kind of, back when I was still ignorant to the entire theme of this book, I was kind of happy that at the very least, instead of just that they had carried alchemist mechanics over to other classes, like the idea of having formulas in lieu of spells. I liked that they had considered that worthy of maintaining, just because otherwise, I mean, what else would you have gotten? Like another class that got relatively low level spells, either from an existing list or a new list that now they would have to support in every source book, maddeningly, until everyone kills themselves.
What do you think about they have an alignment restriction on the Hunter. I don't know if it's on any other ones, but that seems weird to me.
There may be one on War
multi-classes.
Priest, but I forget.
What's the
No,
alignment
there's
restriction
not.
on Hunter?
They're any neutral. I understand the restriction.
Is that a holdover from Druid?
could be.
Yes.
Probably.
Yeah,
Druid has to be any something, and I think it's neutral.
I think they're neutral.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Brawler doesn't have an alignment restriction.
Yeah, I think
Oh
they're
yeah,
didn't see
now that
the
I'm looking
alignment
through it,
restriction.
doesn't seem like anything else has a alignment restriction on
they
it.
have the spellcasting alignment restrictions for divine casters, but that's
Yeah, and I
sure
think
is.
that's what I was thinking of because I was reading through it. But I mean, that's typical anyways.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is understandable too. It's just kind of weird that they would put that in there. I don't know. It's like I want to be. What if I wanted to be a druid and I didn't want to be restricted to the neutrality of the druid?
Apparently, you don't want to be a druid that bad.
And apparently, I don't want to be a druid that bad. Yeah.
And apparently you don't want to be a hunter either, so it's like, there's this combination of things that we can give you, and maybe there'll be other combinations later. Now,
So I understand why a druid can't be has to be neutral, but a hunter, I don't know, because
Druid
they're too
has to
much
be
like an
neutral
animal.
for really old reasons. I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
first edition D&D holdovers.
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
that's why
they have-
druids wield scimitars. Does anybody remember this?
I sure do.
Yeah.
I always
do.
thought it was weird that before you couldn't use any metal stuff. But a scimitar. Scimitar's okay.
My first druid wielded a scimitar. There's nothing wrong
Yeah, because
with
that's the
it.
best thing a druid can wield if you want to hit stuff with it.
Yeah.
So,
Sickles didn't exist.
You could get a shillelagh.
compounding on top of that, do you think they're going to release alternate class features and archetypes for these dual classes?
I think it'll be a while before they do that. They do actually mention in the book there being feats that affect things, like the swashbuckler's panache,
Yep.
and which is where their limiter is, and Duelist does not have such a limit, by the way.
Yeah, but it's like grit, so they can get it back whenever they score a critical hit or drop someone in a combat.
Yeah, it's not. That's
So
not
it's
probably as
One of
often
my
as one would
least
think.
favorite mechanics.
Regardless,
It's a limiter that's not always a limiter.
They mention there being feats and that sort of thing, so there might be alternate archetypes
Yeah,
when they
this is-
actually release the full book.
This
Oh.
is
Right.
it's supposed to be a 256-page book.
Oh.
I believe.
Oh, there's definitely
Yeah, we're getting
archetypes in that book.
Which
something out of this.
means that these 10 classes do not span that, and I believe that they add also feats, but they don't say specifically what they're adding.
Yeah.
Or not that I remember. Maybe I skipped over it.
I don't
So
remember
for what's-
saying anything specifically about feats either way. I mean, about archetypes either way.
Yeah, I don't think it says.
I don't really see it, at least like authorized as a release anytime soon.
This book?
No archetypes.
Oh, archetypes.
So this 256-page rulebook will feature 10 brand new classes to use in your game, as well as a wide number of options for existing characters.
Oh, weird. So they probably have like stuff for current characters that I don't even know what else.
That makes me wonder if they're going to have bridging feats between these classes and other classes.
Hmm.
Oh, they might. That's a interesting thought.
Seems kind of...
I
It's possible, but between this and then a third different class, I mean,
think-
this is already combining two of them, and then you're adding like another one to it. It's just gonna...
Right, but you could also have things like, oh, you wanted this class feature that you gave up. You can
Yeah.
make feats to get that in this multi-class.
Like if
Or,
I could get something else for Slayer, perhaps. Like I don't know what else I didn't need. Like I know they have sneak attack, but if I could just get precision damage too, I think I'd be set.
Yeah, why do you need anything
Because
more
it's
with
only-
Slayer?
It only goes up to 66, and I want
I
a
think-
10d6.
Yeah, but
I
you're
think they'll
also-
probably also have a section in the book.
I
They'll
don't
probably
care if I
also have a
an
section in the book
alternative
for,
favorite enemy.
Anyway, I think they're also going to have a section in the book, and this is just a hunch, considering that is a 256 pages is pretty big, considering this document is 51, and one of those is the credits. That I think they might have something in there for creating classes like this. Maybe guidelines for it or something like that, which I could see them doing, but I would never use.
Well, yeah, the guidelines are simple. It's just you look at Slayer and take the full base attack from one class and over half of the damage from the other, and just add them up.
And
Yep.
then give it prestige class based bonus abilities on top of that.
That scale
Oh.
for 20 levels instead of 10.
Take away trap finding, though.
Yes, take away trap finding.
Finding
Who needs that? Because that isn't given up by almost every archetype in the entire
Dude,
game.
isn't it like it's no secret that Rogue is like my favorite of all the classes to play, and so I'm really excited to see that there's another trap finding Rogue style to play which is Investigator, because it feels like if you want to play a Rogue but you want to change any of the flavor to it at all, you lose certain things about Rogue
Trap
that
finding
are
is
really
number
important.
one.
Yep. that is the one that I'm referring to.
That one and Uncanny Dodge both get dumped pretty hard.
Which is funny because a lot of times you can, well, I guess the main thing that doing as much research as I could over it, it's not necessarily that you lose like disable device per se, but you do kind of lose the ability to do specific kinds of traps unless you find some other way to get it, and that really sucks.
It's the curse of the fighter's bravery.
Poor Bravery. Bravery gets abused. Now, for people who like this is a small anecdote. When Jeff first looked at this book and he saw the shaman, which is a combination of Oracle and Witch, he immediately thought of a character that he at some point intends to make, maybe, who is a Oracle and Witch and Mystic Theurge, and he started mathing up which one was better. Which I appreciate because that was a pretty entertaining conversation, and his character is going to be some sort of bizarro weirdo.
What was
but
the
also,
math?
like,
Which one was better?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know what Jeff intends. That's the bizarre thing.
One of them doesn't get arcane magic except for like 1 through 9. I mean, clearly Shaman is better, and Oracle Witch Mystic Theurge is a trash character.
So that's that. But it's like, for people who are comfortable with the mathing of the game and the build making and that sort of thing, I think that this is going to be more of a complication for character creation than anything else. Oh man, now I have to figure out which one is better for me.
Well, I was going to say that may be true, but having more tools for people like that is always better than less.
Well, yeah, that's true. We will find
Do you
more
mean
and more.
you don't use spreadsheets to make your characters already?
The more stuff
I
that's
use
in
Excel
the game,
documents. I don't know about you.
I know it
The,
does.
Yeah, he's got like pie graphs and stuff.
Oh yeah, I got some power maths.
all I know is that the more stuff that's in the game, the more ways there are to break it, and that's not necessarily, or it's not entirely necessary in some places. Looking at you, Slayer, but the power gamers and the munchkins among us are definitely going to find interesting combos and interesting ways to completely bust Pathfinder wide open with these, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, and it bears mentioning the intent, again, that this is a playtest. I
Yes.
specifically have been harping on the game balance a little bit, because some of these things look ridiculous, but that's the whole point, is to play it and see how it actually feels, how it actually plays at the table, and then you can give Paizo your feedback. I'm sure you can find that on their website.
I'm
Oh
surprised.
yeah, I think you can do it from like November into the middle of December. They have like surveys or something you can take.
December
Yeah.
17th is the last day.
So, does anybody want to say their favorite, or does everyone say their favorite of the new 10?
My favorite of the new 10?
If you had to pick one?
Either conceptually or mechanically.
Yeah. If you had to pick one to play, which would it be?
I have one that I
Investigator.
like.
I would also play Investigator.
I
Or
really
Scald.
want to try that.
It's hard to say between Investigator or Scald. They're both too cool.
Man. I don't know. I'd probably play the Arcanist.
I like the Arcanist conceptually, but like I said, once I got the idea, I barely read it. I was like, gotcha, I figured you out. So from what you guys say, it sounds kind of like it might be a little underwhelming in terms of power / innovation.
It was the one that when I heard, I'm like, oh, I'm going to like this one the most. When I read it, I'm like, okay, I like this one of the least.
Well, it's
Okay.
probably
I did not
because
like the mechanics.
you had high expectations for it.
It's possible.
Let
But
me Oh.
yeah. I mean, other than that, obviously everybody thinks Slayer is OP, so I think it probably likes Slayer.
I was gonna, let me,
They should have called that Hunter, though. Let's be honest.
Let me defend Slayer for a second. First of all, they get a D8. Their base attack bonus does not, or their sneak attack damage does not go up to 10d6. It only goes up
Thank
to
God.
66.
At least there's
And
that.
they don't get feats. Like a
No,
fighter
but
does.
they get a whole slew of additional special abilities. Unique
They're
to
really
them.
good at killing things, only, and
Yeah, that's the whole point of the game.
And they're a little good at skills. They do get 4 skill mod or 4+ in skills and pretty good skills to go
But
with it.
rogues are good at like sneaking and other things, and they're good at maybe killing, and maybe they have.
They're pretty good at sneaking too.
They're pretty good at sneaking.
It does
actually
seem
really good
like
at
their
sneaking.
utility is lacking. They're basically just supposed to be a damage class.
They
Yeah,
get
they don't
all
get
of
any
the
fancy
rogue
stuff.
talents for sneaking. You realize they get access to pretty much all of the
Yeah,
rogue
but they don't
talents
get
for
any of
sneaking.
the rogue talents for like disabling stuff. I don't even think they get disable device.
No, they don't.
Actually, one of the things that appeals to me about the Arcanist is that it's an intelligence-based class that's a little bit closer to Sorcerer. So if you wanted to play like a Sorcerer-type character and still have like the really good skills that are associated with a Wizard, it's kind of a cool in-between, I think.
Yeah.
Also,
They've got
you can play a
they've got an
sorcerer.
archetype for that.
I like,
Yeah.
yeah, those are different. I like the idea of being able to play a character who has like innate magic talent and being smart and not having to be like pretty.
Like I said, I really liked the concept of Arcanist, and then when I read it, I was like, not my favorite.
Well, what is your favorite, Rory?
Probably Shaman.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that one
would
seems really cool
say-
too.
I would
No.
say that for me it would be also Shaman.
Investigator and
Ignore
Swashbuckler are
how it
both
plays.
really close.
The concept.
Now, if Swashbuckler had more gun stuff, or any,
Yeah.
would that have taken the top?
Okay, it said a cross between gunslinger and fighter, and like, there's no guns.
No,
No,
All
but
they
I
get-
think it's because
all they
of
get is a janky grit that only
yeah,
works with
I
stabbing.
think it's the
You can,
grit
as a
style.
talent, take proficiency with firearms.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what about having the gunslinger guns and stuff like that? Oh, never mind. You don't get them.
Oh, I've got a question because I don't know enough about Gunslinger, but you've played it a couple times, Rory. Are there feats that are specifically for grit?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
wonder
there's a
if
whole
'cause
bunch of them.
the first thing that I thought of when you said that maybe there will be feats that are like bridging feats, I wonder if there will be at least maybe changes to some of the grit feats so that they are for both panache and for grit. But, only obviously the specific ones that you could maybe use for both.
I'm guessing more that they will just make duplicates of those feats for a
And just
panache,
call them a new name.
because that's what they've done for other things that are similar, like between classes. You have like extra channel, extra grit, extra arcane pool. They're just basically versions of the same feat to give more uses of the same class abilities.
So we could
Yeah.
possibly, if they do end up coming up with brand new feats that do the same thing, then those will probably be in the book or panache.
And those all tie back to like the original, like extra bard song and extra rage and extra
Right.
that sort of thing. I think that's a pretty long-held tradition in terms of, well, I have these things to spend. I can take a feat to get more of them. To be fair, I think the panache and grit are stupid.
It's not being
I
more
don't-
fair.
No, it's not. That's
That's not fair at all.
Well, I
Nope,
guess, I mean,
it's not.
Opinionated.
it is fair for you to alert us that you think they're stupid so that we can
There
take
you go.
anything you
Yeah,
say
I
I was
about
that's
being
what
fair
you're trying
for
to say.
I was being fair for you and not for other people.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I liked the idea of Swashbuckler was another one that I really didn't read very much of because, like, as soon as I saw panache and deeds, I was like, these are. I get it. I understand what you're. I understand what you're selling me now. I didn't think for a minute that it would have guns because, like I said, I missed that that part of the point. I just saw that it was basically a sword slinger.
Yeah.
In fact, I sort of got what do they call that? I got more of a vibe of that one late third edition fighter or fighters with sword spells thing. I can't remember what the book was called now.
Duskblade.
No, I'm talking about the
Oh,
book for
Tome of
maneuvers.
Battle?
Yeah, sure. There you go.
Book
I
of
got that
Battle.
kind of vibe, and I was just kind of like that. I knew they weren't going to try to shoehorn that in exactly as was because that would have been a really complicated, thankless disaster. But at the same time, I kind of got that idea that they were trying to, like, basically mage up your fighter a little bit, at least in terms of gameplay execution. Make it so that you have more options than just swing.
And they still get bravery, though.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
I would hate for my
Somebody-
swashbuckler to be a coward.
So yeah,
Said
if
no
you
player
guys
ever.
if you guys want to download the playtest materials yourself, you can go to the Paizo website and you sort of download it through their store, which I still think is a little awkward, but whatever.
That's how everyone does it now.
It is.
Yeah, and then you can download it yourself, and I encourage you to play with it and bust it, because busting things is fun.
Busted.
Yeah, please tell them your opinions on Slayer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
have
think
them
it
change
should
the
be
name maybe.
More
to
power.
Stalker or something.
definitely. I think we should try to make sure that they know that Slayer needs to have 10d6 sneak attack damage. It's
And
not
I
even
think-
going to
I
be.
think Ed should mention the thing about Hunter.
Don't
Yeah.
put Hunter in the Slayer description, please.
I actually did see someone on the forum say that they would like to see a couple more sneak attack damage for Slayer build.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I also am
People
planning on
think that
ruining
it's
all
fun
of the games I'm in
looking.
from now on.
We'd like Slayer to start with a +2 base attack bonus. Can we get that?
Also,
Make it
they
a
should be
first
getting
edition ranger. Just give it
d12s.
an extra hit die at first level.
The
Yeah.
half favorite enemy and half sneak attack is not good enough.
Apparently.
Okay, before we end this, I wanted to say that the Demon Descent Prestige Edition is up, and if you guys want the hardcover book for that, you just donate and you add an extra $45 to your thing to get it.
What is this?
That's on Kickstarter,
Like
you mean?
Kickstarter?
Yep.
On Kickstarter.
Oh,
Yep.
Demon, yeah.
There's 21 more days left as of, what is the date? November 20th. So 21 more days. They've already reached their goal, but
Do they have
So get your
stretch goals?
donations in
looks
before the
really
41st.
cool.
For the 41st.
Well, yeah, I mean, because that's when it's going to end. You want to be in there, right?
20 plus 21.
Yep.
And
41st. Bingo.
If you-
I'm so good at this.
if you want to listen to some geeks gab about the quick start rules, our previous podcast, episode 27, is all about that stuff.
Yeah, it was super fun.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we recorded that right before the Kickstarter started.
Yes. So we were super timely about it. As per usual. We were timely about everything.
Yeah, half a week.
So anyway, yeah, that's Advanced Class Guide. You can find us on Twitter at House Rule. You can send us an email at houserulepodcast@gmail.com. Otherwise, visit us at houserule.com, or you can watch streams and hang out and find some more podcasts and other blog stuff up there.
Yeah, it's super fun.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everyone.
Yep.
Goodbye.
See ya.
Bye.